Ever wondered why medieval towns look the way they do? Did you know that many features of these charming old cities were shaped by fire and fear? Number 7. The Great Rebuilding. Have you ever visited London and marveled at its grand stone buildings and wide streets? Well, you can thank a massive disaster for that. In September 1666, a tiny spark in a baker's shop on Pudding Lane ignited one of history's most infamous urban disasters, the Great Fire of London. For 4 terrifying days, flames devoured the city, transforming the medieval metropolis into a smoldering wasteland. Over 13,000 homes, 87 churches, and countless businesses crumbled into ash. The destruction was so complete that witnesses described the sky as glowing red for miles around, and the heat was so intense that the lead roof of St. Paul's Cathedral literally melted and poured down like rain. But here's the wild part: this catastrophe became London's bizarre blessing in disguise. Before the fire, London was a chaotic maze of timber-framed buildings packed tightly together, with narrow streets where neighbors could practically shake hands from their windows across the way. Disease festered in these cramped quarters, most infamously during the 1665 plague that killed a quarter of London's population. After the flames died down, architect Christopher Wren seized the opportunity to reimagine the city. Though his grand vision for a grid-patterned city with wide boulevards wasn't fully realized, Londoners stubbornly insisted on rebuilding on their original property lines. Significant improvements emerged. The Rebuilding of London Act of 1666 mandated wider streets, banned timber frame construction in favor of brick or stone, and established standardized building regulations. The medieval St. Paul's Cathedral, damaged beyond repair, gave way to Wren's masterpiece, the iconic dome that dominates London's skyline today. The rebuilding created a city more resistant to both fire and disease. It's fascinating to think that tourists today are admiring architecture born from tremendous tragedy. London wasn't alone in this fiery transformation. Across medieval Europe, devastating fires repeatedly reshaped urban landscapes. Hamburg, Germany experienced 4 major fires between 1284 and 1842, each time rebuilding with more fire-resistant materials and better planning. Warsaw, Poland rose from the ashes of multiple conflagrations to emerge stronger. It's a pattern repeated countless times: medieval urban centers trapped in cycles of destruction and rebirth, each iteration incorporating painful lessons learned from the flames. Number 6. The birth of building codes. Did you know the rules that govern modern construction have roots in medieval fear? After watching their homes and livelihoods repeatedly reduced to cinders, medieval town leaders realized something had to change. The solution: the world's first building codes. In 1189, London authorities issued the Assize of Buildings, arguably Europe's first comprehensive building regulation. This groundbreaking document required party walls between properties to be at least 3 feet thick and made of stone. Citizens caught using flammable materials faced hefty fines. Following London's lead, cities across Europe developed their own regulations. In 1530, Amsterdam banned thatched roofs within city limits after fires repeatedly swept through neighborhoods. Nuremberg mandated stone dividing walls between buildings in 1613. Paris required stone facades following devastating fires in the 17th century. These medieval innovations marked humanity's first systematic attempt to legislate safety into the very fabric of cities. The regulations evolved with each new disaster. After York's catastrophic fire of 1137, which destroyed St. Peter's Cathedral, the city mandated wider streets to create fire breaks. Following Burn's destructive 1405 blaze, authorities banned wooden chimneys and required regular chimney cleaning, creating one of the first professional chimney sweep guilds. These regulations didn't just reshape physical structures, they transformed society. Suddenly, building a home or business became more expensive, requiring specialized materials and skilled labor. This created new social hierarchies, as the wealthy could afford fire-resistant stone structures while poorer residents remained vulnerable in wooden dwellings on the outskirts. In some cities, this inadvertently created the first zoning laws, with fire-safe districts commanding higher property values. Building codes also birthed new professions. Fire wardens patrolled streets ensuring compliance, inspecting chimneys and enforcing regulations. Master masons and expert carpenters gained social status as their specialized knowledge of fire-resistant construction techniques became essential. These medieval innovations laid groundwork for modern building safety standards that protect billions of people today. Number 5. The rise of firefighting guilds. Ever thought about who would save your home if it caught fire in medieval times? Before professional fire departments existed, medieval towns developed fascinating community-based solutions to combat flames. Around 1250 in Paris, the first organized fire watches emerged, citizens assigned to patrol neighborhoods at night, carrying wooden rattles to sound the alarm if they spotted flames. These early warning systems spread across Europe, with watchmen stationed in church towers or purpose-built fire towers scanning the horizon for telltale smoke or flames. By the 14th century, more formalized firefighting guilds began appearing in larger cities. Florence's Arte dei Fabbri Blacksmiths Guild maintained specialized iron hooks and ladders used to pull down burning buildings, creating fire breaks. London's fire companies required each parish to store leather buckets, fire hooks, and ladders for community use during emergencies. These early firefighters developed surprisingly sophisticated techniques. In medieval Germany, the Feuerlaufer fire runners trained to form human chains, passing buckets of water from nearby rivers or wells to douse flames. Teams armed with long poles topped with wet cloths would beat out smaller blazes, while others focused on evacuating residents and salvaging valuables. Amsterdam created one of the most advanced medieval firefighting systems. By 1400, the city organized district fire masters who directed volunteer brigades during emergencies. Each household contributed to maintaining pumping equipment and leather buckets marked with their district numbers. The city even established a rudimentary hydrant system with access ports to canals strategically positioned throughout neighborhoods. Firefighting equipment evolved over centuries. Early medieval responders relied on simple bucket chains and demolition to create fire breaks. By the 1500s, more sophisticated tools emerged. German craftsman Anton Plattner invented a fire engine with a hand-operated pump in 1518, revolutionizing firefighting capabilities. These early engines, called squirts, resembled large syringes mounted on wheeled platforms, allowing firefighters to direct water jets at flames from a safer distance. Venice, particularly vulnerable due to its wooden structures built over water, developed specialized firefighting boats equipped with pumps that could draw canal water directly onto blazes. The Venetian arsenal maintained dedicated fire vessels ready to respond at any hour. The social impact of these guilds extended beyond emergencies. Fire guild members often received tax benefits and special social status in exchange for their dangerous service. Annual festivals celebrated these protectors, with competitions demonstrating their skills. In some German towns, firefighters performed regular drills on market days, turning safety training into public entertainment while reminding citizens of fire dangers. Number 4. The Water Revolution. Have you ever considered how medieval people accessed water during a fire emergency? Water accessibility shaped medieval urban development in surprising ways. The relationship between water sources and urban planning created distinctive patterns still visible in preserved medieval towns today. Cities located along rivers typically oriented their main streets parallel to the waterway, with smaller perpendicular streets creating a ladder-like pattern providing multiple access points to water. This wasn't just convenient for daily use, it was a deliberate firefighting strategy allowing quicker water access during emergencies. Inland towns without natural waterways invested heavily in public wells. Rothenburg ob der Tauber in Germany features dozens of wells strategically placed at street intersections, creating water access points within short distances throughout the town. These weren't just utilitarian structures, they became social hubs and architectural showcases, often crowned with decorative ironwork and stone carvings. By the 14th century, more sophisticated water management systems emerged. Bruges, Belgium developed an advanced network of canals allowing water to be diverted throughout the city for both commercial and emergency purposes. Nuremberg engineered an impressive water delivery system with wooden pipes feeding numerous public fountains that doubled as firefighting reservoirs. Towns situated on hillsides faced particular challenges. Building cisterns to capture rainwater became essential, with many towns requiring each household to maintain water storage for emergencies. In Mediterranean regions, the Romans' ancient water management knowledge was revived and expanded, with towns like Siena, Italy developing elaborate underground water collection systems. The need for water access also influenced architectural styles. In regions prone to drought or with limited water sources, buildings often incorporated internal courtyards with cisterns collecting rainwater from roof catchment systems. These features weren't just practical, they became defining elements of regional architectural identities. Water management infrastructure created new occupations and social roles. Well keepers maintained public water sources, ensuring they remained operational during emergencies. In larger cities like Paris and London, water carriers transported river water to households for daily use and were officially incorporated into firefighting response plans, receiving special privileges during emergencies to access water sources and expedite delivery. Perhaps most fascinating was the development of municipal water management as a government function. By the late medieval period, ensuring adequate water for firefighting became recognized as essential for urban security. Town councils established special tax levies specifically for maintaining water infrastructure, marking early examples of public utilities. In some regions, water management became so crucial that it influenced political structures, with representatives from districts organized around water access points. Number 3, the Stone Revolution. Did you know that the charming stone buildings we associate with medieval towns were often born from catastrophe? Before recurring fires taught harsh lessons, most medieval dwellings were wooden structures with thatched roofs, essentially perfect kindling waiting for a spark. The transition from timber to stone construction represents one of history's most significant architectural shifts, fundamentally changing urban landscapes across Europe. This transformation didn't happen uniformly or quickly. It occurred in waves following major fires, with wealthy districts converting to stone first while poorer areas remained vulnerable. Normandy led this architectural revolution. Following devastating fires in the 11th century, Norman builders pioneered techniques for efficient stone construction that spread throughout Europe. Their innovations included standardized stone cutting methods and improved mortar formulations that allowed faster, more economical building. The Stone Revolution required entirely new supply chains and labor systems. Stone quarries outside cities expanded dramatically, creating specialized extraction industries. Transportation networks evolved to move these heavy materials efficiently, with river barges and specialized wagons developed specifically for stone transport. New professions emerged: master masons, stone carvers, and mortar specialists formed powerful guilds controlling the knowledge needed for fire-resistant construction. This transformation deepened economic divides within medieval society. Stone buildings cost substantially more than timber structures, meaning wealthy merchants and nobility upgraded to safer construction while ordinary citizens remained vulnerable in wooden dwellings. In many cities, this created distinctive districts visible in contemporary woodcuts and paintings, stone structures clustered in city centers with wooden buildings relegated to outskirts. The visual character of European regions became increasingly distinct as communities used locally available stone. The golden limestone of Bath, England created a distinctively different cityscape from the dark volcanic stone of Clermont-Ferrand in France or the reddish sandstone of Strasbourg. These regional variations, initially driven by practical necessity and local resource availability, eventually became cherished aspects of cultural identity. Religious buildings led this transformation, with cathedrals and churches using innovative stone construction techniques that eventually filtered down to civic and domestic architecture. The church's emphasis on fire-resistant construction stemmed from practical concerns about protecting relics and religious texts, but had far-reaching architectural consequences, inspiring new building methods later adopted by secular structures. Perhaps most significantly, the shift to stone construction completely altered the character of urban fires. While wooden towns could be entirely consumed in hours, stone buildings created natural fire breaks. This changed the psychology of urban living, gradually reducing the constant dread of catastrophic fires that had shadowed medieval urban life for centuries. Number 2, the widening streets. Have you ever wandered through a preserved medieval town and noticed how streets suddenly widen into plazas or marketplaces? Those open spaces might be deliberate fire breaks with fascinating stories behind them. The characteristic narrow streets of early medieval towns were practical for defense and climate control, but created perfect conditions for spreading flames. When fires inevitably struck, desperate authorities would often demolish entire rows of buildings to create gaps flames couldn't jump across, inadvertently redesigning their cities through destruction. Following particularly destructive fires, many towns seized the opportunity to permanently widen streets rather than allow rebuilding on original footprints. Prague's transformation after its 1541 fire demonstrates this pattern perfectly. Before the disaster, the Malá district featured extremely narrow lanes where buildings nearly touched across streets. After the flames subsided, authorities required wider thoroughfares during reconstruction. Similar patterns occurred in Lisbon following its 1755 disaster, creating the distinctive street pattern visible today. Market squares, those charming open areas that define the centers of many European towns, often originated as deliberate fire breaks. In Germany, the tradition of the Marktplatz market square evolved partially from fire prevention efforts, creating open spaces where flames couldn't easily jump between districts. These practical safety features eventually became commercial and social centers, fundamentally influencing how communities functioned. The widening of streets triggered profound social changes. Broader thoroughfares improved commerce by allowing larger carts and more market stalls. Better visibility and air circulation reduced disease transmission. Street widening often accompanied the installation of cobblestones replacing muddy paths, improving sanitation and transportation. These changes catalyzed economic development, allowing towns to expand commercial activities beyond previous limitations. Street widening also transformed social interactions. Wider streets permitted more elaborate religious processions and civic celebrations, changing how communities expressed collective identity. Enhanced visibility in public spaces influenced behavioral norms, as residents found themselves more consistently under neighbors' observation. The patchwork pattern of medieval street widths often reveals a city's fire history to knowledgeable observers. Districts rebuilt after fires typically feature more regular, wider streets than older sections that escaped flames. This creates the distinctive irregular street patterns tourists find so charming, not the result of poor planning, but rather the physical record of centuries of adaptation to disaster. Number 1, the space beyond the walls. Did you know that fire danger forced medieval towns to push certain industries outside their protective walls? The medieval urban landscape extended far beyond what most people imagine, with fire-prone activities strategically positioned away from population centers. Medieval urban planners faced a fundamental dilemma: certain industrial processes essential to urban life posed severe fire risks. Their solution created the characteristic separation of industries still visible in well-preserved medieval cities today. Tanneries, which processed animal hides using highly flammable materials, were typically banished to city outskirts, usually downstream where their foul odors and fire dangers wouldn't threaten the town. Blacksmiths and metalworkers, whose forges required intense heat, often clustered in designated districts away from densely packed housing. Pottery kilns, glass manufacturing, and lime production, all requiring extreme temperatures, operated from safe distances outside town walls. Perhaps most significant was the strategic placement of bakers and brewers. Though essential for daily life, their ovens and kilns caused numerous urban fires. Many towns required these businesses to operate from stone structures with specialized chimney designs, often clustered in designated areas where monitoring was easier. Street names preserve this history. London's Pudding Lane, where the Great Fire began, and Baker Street reflect these industrial zones. The most dangerous industries operated under strict time regulations. In many towns, metalworkers could only operate forges during daylight hours when sparks would be visible. Night curfews for fire-using industries became standard practice across Europe. Some towns even prohibited certain manufacturing during windy conditions when sparks could travel farther. This functional organization created distinctive settlement patterns still visible in medieval town layouts. Main streets typically connected gates to central marketplaces, while industrial quarters developed in predictable locations based on prevailing winds and water access. In many towns, industrial suburbs evolved into specialized villages with their own identities and governance structures, gradually incorporated into expanding urban areas over centuries. Fire risk considerations influenced religious buildings too. Monasteries and convents, which often housed substantial libraries and performed industrial activities like brewing, typically maintained significant fire breaks around their structures. Church buildings frequently served as community fireproof storage for valuable documents and irreplaceable items. These spatial arrangements transformed how medieval people conceptualized urban space. Towns weren't singular entities but complex systems with specialized zones serving different functions. This spatial organization created new social patterns, with workers in fire-prone industries often forming distinct communities with their own customs, saints, and festivals. The physical segregation of hazardous activities represented one of history's first examples of zoning, the deliberate separation of incompatible activities that remains fundamental to modern urban planning. What medieval fire prevention methods might we have overlooked that could benefit our modern cities? How might our urban landscape look different today if fire hadn't repeatedly forced medieval towns to rebuild and reimagine themselves?